So it's been a few days since I last talked about the Lions and their free agent moves. And of course, in those days, the Lions have decided to make a number of transactions. Now, most of them are pretty under the radar stuff, like signing Pat O'Connor to a 1 year deal, re signing Al Qadim Muhammad, guys that were useful down the stretch when all of the Lions defenders were injured and unavailable. And they were valiant in the production that they provided, but they aren't exactly marquee signings. So the guys that we're talking about today aren't either. I should emphasize that the Lions just are adding to the depth or re-signing some of those depth pieces that we talked about. But I don't know. With these free agent videos, because the Lions aren't really building that much through free agency, which is a good thing. They shouldn't be. They are a build through the draft kind of team, and they are an elite team, and elite teams don't need to build through free agency. So I'm not complaining about the lack of big moves aside from DJ Reed. But it just means that these videos are a lot more low key, and we're talking about guys that are not necessarily needle movers. But there are some exciting names, and there is actually an interesting conversation that has come out of these signings today. So, first things first, I want to address something that I missed and I said I would talk about. This happened after I uploaded my last Lions free agent video. The Lions re-signed Tim Patrick, wide receiver, to a 1 year deal worth up to $4 million. This is an absolute slam dunk signing. Tim Patrick, who was brought in at the end of training camp last season, he was kind of brought in just to be the wide receiver X. Allen Robinson was brought in too to compete with him, but it was always Tim Patrick's position to lose, and he ran with it. Tim Patrick was coming off of multiple Achilles tears, significant injuries. This was the last chance for him to kind of revive his career after his injuries completely ruined his time in Denver, and he came in and he was a rock star. He's huge, he can block, he's great in contested catches. You saw he actually mossed former Lion Amani Oruwariye in Dallas in that Cowboys game before an unfortunate injury to Aiden Hutchinson kind of derailed the vibes surrounding that blowout. But Patrick all year was fantastic. He got a couple of touchdowns in the last stretch of the season. There was a memorable one against the Bills where he really stretched out for the end zone. That was really fun. And overall, he was just a very solid wide receiver 3. Now, he is not or was not as productive in that role as, say, a Josh Reynolds was. That being said, he also wasn't expected to be because Jameson Williams' breakout really limited the amount of production that was available for Patrick. The Lions have a lot of mouths to feed, so you don't need Tim Patrick to be this 50 catch, 650, 700 yard guy that catches half a dozen touchdowns. You just need him to be exactly what he was, which is another option, another safety blanket, and someone who can catch, contested catches and just be a different kind of player. Now, despite the fact that the Lions did sign him, I am expecting that they'll bring in someone else in the draft to be more of a developmental option for that wide receiver X role because, again, for as much as I love Tim Patrick and for as much as this signing is fantastic, you also can't really rely on him. You do, not long-term at least. You can rely on him next season, 2025, for sure. He does have injury concerns that you have to at least prepare for. You have to have contingencies in place just in the case of injury. But on the whole, Patrick will be solid this year, but he is on the wrong side of 30 with those injury concerns. You expect that he's not going to be able to stick around forever. So the Lions do need a long-term option at that X receiver role. So we'll see what happens, but Tim Patrick, absolutely fantastic signing. And then today, as of recording this video, or in the last 24 hours, the Lions have been very active on the corner market, which was not expected, especially after signing DJ Reed, because you look at the Lions depth chart, they had DJ Reed, great, he's your number 1. Terrion Arnold, great, he's your number 2. Amik Robertson, he's going to be your nickel/3. Ennis Rakestraw, he's going to be your reserve outside nickel hybrid. We'll see what happens. He's a sophomore that didn't really play last year in his rookie year, but he's presumably your 4th corner, 2nd nickel option. And then that's where the questions come in. That's where the question marks were. So the Lions decided to be a little bit more active in signing depth. They did lose Kindle Vildor, which I'm sure Lions fans aren't exactly upset about, but he was a useful depth option for the Lions, despite how productive or unproductive he was. He was better in 2024 than he was in 2023, but for a lot of fans, it's hard to remove the image of him having the ball bounce off his face mask and into Brandon Ayuk's hands in the NFC Championship game, possibly costing the Lions a trip to the Super Bowl. But alas, he's gone. The boogeyman, the bad man, not the boogeyman, the bad man is gone. So with Vildor gone, the Lions replace him with Rock Ya-Sin. He's coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. He played a depth role over there. I think he appeared in 13 games. Didn't really do a whole lot in those games, but he was a depth corner. He wasn't relied on a ton. He also had a stint with the Ravens in 2023, and he also played with the Raiders 2022. And his previous 3 seasons, he played with the Colts. He's one of those, he's probably more of a boundary corner at this point. He will be the new, I guess, 5th option, because in the case of a ton of injuries, you probably put Amik Robertson on the outside before you call on Rock Ya-Sin. So I would assume that he's 5th on the depth chart right now, but for being a 5th corner, totally solid, totally fine. Don't really have a lot of complaints. It just adds to the depth, and it's someone that fans should at least have heard the name before, right? And whether or not he's better than Kindle Vildor, I don't know, but at least you bring someone who can provide the same kind of value at the outside corner and as a depth corner option. Then the other guy they bring in is Avonte Maddox from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Maddox is more of the nickel option. He's kind of a nickel and boundary hybrid. Like, he can play inside, outside. He has that versatility that some of the other guys like Rakestraw and Robertson have in this defense already. So presumably Maddox will compete with Rakestraw to be the backup nickel. And if not, he will just be your 6, 7. Maybe he'll compete with Rock Ya-Sin for the 5th corner. I don't know. The point is, the Lions have now sort of solidified their depth at corner. You have your top, 6 guys now in DJ Reed, Arnold, Rakestraw, Robertson, Rock Ya-Sin, and now Maddox as well. So it's getting... You also have Khalil Dorsey, I believe, who's going to be coming back from injury as well. So the Lions have a lot of corners already signed through training camp, which means I don't think this is a position that they're going to add in the draft at all. Now, that is somewhat to be expected. You're not going to draft someone in the first 3 rounds anyways, because you just spent 2 premium picks last year at this position, and you also just signed DJ Reed to a pretty modest contract to be your CB1. You don't need a starter right away, which is what the Lions needed last year. They were in a pretty desperate situation. They needed a starter, and they got 2, possibly. We'll see what Rakestraw turns into, but Arnold is at least a solid starter on the outside. So now the Lions have signed their entire corner room. Maybe they bring in a late round pick, maybe an undrafted rookie free agent, but at this point, it seems like the Lions corner room is set. All that the names are set and the guys are set. It's just, where do they slot in? Is Maddox going to be the 4? Is he going to usurp Rakestraw on the roster? Or is he going to fall down to the 5, 6? I don't know. The point is, you have everything figured out. So now it's just who performs the best in training camp and as the season goes on. So it's at least noteworthy that the Lions are investing so much in this position in free agency, because as we saw in seasons past, the Lions have had a lot of corner issues over the years. 2023, like I said, Kindle Vildor was the starter in the NFC Championship game, which is obviously not an ideal situation. Last year, after 1 or 2 snaps, Amik Robertson broke his arm, and Vildor was essentially the starter in the NFC divisional round against Washington this year. He was okay, not great. The entire defense was not great, though. So, the entire team was not great in that game, as we know. We don't need to relitigate that. The hope is that this time around, obviously you hope that you're healthy and the defense can at least be somewhat intact by the time you get to the postseason, because we know they won't be intact at the start of the year because Alllllll McNeil has the knee injury that he's rehabbing from. He's probably going to miss the first at least month or 2 of the season, so he's going to take time to get up to speed, but it's about keeping as many starters healthy and on the field for the playoffs. And even if you don't, even if DJ Reed goes down, even if Terrion Arnold goes down, now you have more depth options, which is something you can never have enough of, as we've seen with all the injuries to the Lions so far. And that's why when you look at the edge position, for example, they bring back Marcus Davenport. I know they cut Zadarius Smith. They might bring him back on a cheaper contract now that the money isn't guaranteed. The Lions are very much investing in the depth so that if they are ravaged by injuries once again, hopefully the impact of those injuries won't be as pronounced as it was in the 2024 season. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for joining me to, I guess, recap another batch of free agent signings. If you're interested, you can go watch all the other free agent signing videos. I haven't talked about every single re-signing or whatever because a lot of them just frankly are bubble players that if they make the roster, that'll be a more notable thing. It's just depth for training camp, and it's nice to have bodies for the practice squad and whatnot. But I also had a video go out earlier this week talking about all the Aaron Rodgers drama, a little bit of a break from all the Lions content because there was a lot of rumors surrounding Rodgers and the Minnesota Vikings, so I wanted to talk about that. I think as of yesterday, Rodgers was meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if we learned anything from that. It was his first visit, but there's been a lot of rumors, so I just talked about that briefly. If you're interested in that, you can go watch that video as well. That is going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you loved it, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss any future uploads regarding the Lions, news. The draft is coming up soon. I'm going to have some content made for all of that, so be on the lookout on the channel for that, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.